I'm 30, and for the last 10 years I've helped run my dad's custom cabinetry business. It's small but successful. We design and build high-end kitchen cabinetry, the kind rich people show off on Pinterest. I started learning from him right out of high school, skipped college, never looked back. My mom died when I was 16, so it's just been me and my dad since then. We were close, not overly emotional, but we understood each other. He taught me everything he knew, and I worked my ass off. I genuinely thought one day the business would be mine, or at least partly mine. We had that kind of unspoken agreement. He even joked about it sometimes. "Someday you'll be the old grump yelling at employees to stand better," he used to say. So you can imagine my shock when 6 months ago he introduced me to his new girlfriend, and it was Alyssa, my best friend from college. Alyssa and I were inseparable in our early 20s. We met freshman year, lived together for 3 years, traveled together, even tried starting a podcast once. I was maid of honor in her wedding when she married her ex-husband, Scott, at 22. They divorced barely a year later. After that, we drifted a little. She moved out of state. We kept in touch but weren't as close. I never expected her to show up again, especially not on my dad's arm. He just walked into the shop one day. It was nothing, said he had someone special, and there she was, my 24-year-old best friend, standing there holding hands with my 62-year-old father. My stomach dropped. I thought it was a prank, but no. He introduced her like it was perfectly normal. She giggled, told me I looked surprised, no kidding, and kissed his cheek in front of me. I stood there in complete silence, like my brain couldn't compute what I was seeing. My dad, my friend, holding hands, smiling, acting like this wasn't the creepiest thing to ever happen in my life. It only got weirder from there. Alyssa moved in with him 2 weeks later, said she needed a fresh start, and my dad was just what she needed. He seemed 10 years younger overnight, suddenly wearing new clothes, buying cologne, even signing up for salsa classes. And she was acting like she belonged. Sitting at the desk in our office, offering design opinions on cabinetry she had no clue about, laughing at our contractor meetings like she was part of the team. At first, I tried to be civil, tried to convince myself it was a phase, some weird midlife crisis, that maybe he was just lonely, that maybe she just needed help. But then I started noticing things that didn't sit right, like how my dad stopped sharing financial reports with me, how Alyssa started taking calls meant for me and told clients she was co-man of the business, and the worst? When I overheard a conversation between them in the back office. I'd left my phone charger and walked in without knocking. They didn't hear me come in, but I heard everything. My dad was saying he didn't think I had the vision to run the business on my... Alyssa said, "She's great at taking orders, but not much else. I think it's time to move things in a new direction." I stood there, frozen, listening to my dad, the man who taught me talk about me out, while Alyssa, my old friend, agreed. She hadn't once cried to me about feeling like a failure. I backed out quietly and drove straight home, sat in my driveway for an hour trying not to scream. I haven't confronted them, not directly. I've just been biding my time, gathering, trying to figure out if I'm being paranoid, if they're seriously planning to cut me out of the... But I know one thing for sure. Something is definitely... The morning after I overheard them, I showed up to the shop earlier than usual. I wanted to check the books. I don't usually do the accounting, but I've always had access. My dad was old school, paper receipts, spreadsheets on a desktop computer in his office. Except now, the password had been changed. That had never happened before. I tried my usual login 3 times. Nothing. I even tried the old family passwords, my mom's birthday, our dog's name. Nothing worked. I felt this cold, hollow twist in my stomach, like something inside me just confirmed it. I wasn't paranoid. I was being locked out. Later that day, Alyssa showed up wearing one of my old jackets, the green canvas one I used to wear in college. I stared at it for a full minute before realizing she'd stolen it from my parents' house back when she used to stay over. She smiled when she saw me looking at it and asked if I wanted it back for nostalgia's sake. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I was going to explode. The next week, she posted a picture on Instagram from inside our work truck. Caption, "Hard hat, hard work, harder man." With my dad in the background, shirtless, sanding a cabinet. I was mortified, but then things got worse. I found out from one of our longtime clients, an older woman named Valerie, who's basically family, that Alyssa had emailed her directly with a new pricing structure. Except we never discussed new pricing. I asked Valerie to forward me and what I read made my blood boil. Alyssa had rebranded the business in the footer, Renaissance Homes, a vision by Alyssa & Co. There was no and me, just her, not even my dad's name. At that point, I knew I needed to figure out how far this went, so I reached out to our accountant, someone I've worked with for years, and asked for a quick chat. That's when the real bomb dropped. She told me my dad had formally changed the business registration 2 weeks ago. Alyssa was now listed as co-owner. I thought I was going to throw up. I hadn't been told anything. No notice, no meeting, no conversation. My dad just signed half the business over to my 24-year-old ex-best friend, and didn't even tell me. And as if that wasn't enough, the accountant looked at me kind of cautiously and asked, "Did you know about the retirement clause?" I didn't. Apparently, part of the new agreement Alyssa and my dad signed included a clause that allowed them to transition out unnecessary operations roles over the next 90 days. In short, if I didn't have an official title or ownership stake, I could be let go. Just like that. That's when I realized they were already prepping to fire me from my own family's business. Built on my mother's recipes for wood stain, designs she'd sketched out on napkins when they were first getting started. Her handwriting is still on the blueprints we keep in the back cabinet, and now her husband and my supposed best friend were plotting to erase me from it all. But that wasn't even the worst part. That came a few days later. When I checked Alyssa's private Instagram, she hadn't removed me yet. Rookie move. She posted a picture of her holding a positive pregnancy test. Caption, 2 pink lines, everything's changing. And the very first comment? From my dad's burner account, forever my love. After I saw the pregnancy post, something in me snapped. I sat there, staring at that pink test in her hand, the fake sweet caption, my dad's little forever comment, and I swear I stopped breathing. It felt like my entire life had flipped upside down in the most humiliating way possible. Alyssa, pregnant, with my father's child. It felt disgusting just typing that out. I thought back to all the weird conversations they had been having in hushed tones around the sudden interest Alyssa had taken in the business, my dad buying her a new car just to get around. Everything I'd brushed off as him being, she wasn't just some distraction. She was securing her place, in the business, in his life, in our family legacy. And me? I was being erased. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I laid in bed, clutching the old binder of original shop designs Mom had drawn back in 1997. Flipping through them was like flipping through my childhood. It was her dream. And now this parasite was nesting inside it. So I made a decision. No more waiting. No more watching. I was going to dig through everything they were trying to keep from me. The next day, while they were out at a vendor meeting, code for salsa class, I went back to the office and used the one trick I knew would still work. Booted up the old shared Mac in the shop, opened the guest account, and searched through the cached files. Most of them were useless, until I found a folder labeled Transition Plans Confidential. Inside, a full proposal outlining how to modernize the company by rebranding it completely under Alyssa's name. They were calling it Alyssa Interior. They even had a mock logo, and there, in plain text, was a proposed employee phase-out schedule with my name on, listed as creative conflict with new direction. They weren't even subtle about it. I sat there shaking, reading line after line of plans they'd made to erase my influence, reduce my hours, eventually offer me a generous exit pack. They budgeted $5,000, laughable, and launch a whole new image of the company with Alyssa as the visionary and my dad as the legacy builder, the two of them, together. They were planning to launch the rebrand announcement next month, right after the gender reveal party. Yes, apparently they were throwing one for my unborn half-sibling, a whole damn party with a catered lunch and pink-blue balloon arches, and they'd already invited our top clients to the celebration. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did something better. I copied the entire folder, every file, every email, every schedule. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew this. I wasn't going down quietly. They wanted a war? They just got one. I didn't show up to the shop the next day. No warning, no call, no explanation. I wanted them to feel the silence, to wonder what I knew, to sweat a little. Instead, I spent the entire day in a quiet cafe across town, poring over every file I'd copied. There were documents dating back months, messages between my dad and Alyssa, meeting notes from the rebrand discussions, even screenshots of Instagram DMs where she pitched herself to a local interior design magazine as the co-founder of a reinvented legacy firm. She was building her own little empire, with my father's money, my mother's ideas, and my blood, sweat, and years. The part that really made my stomach turn? A PDF draft of a pitch Alyssa planned to present at the gender reveal. She called it, Merging Bloodlines and Brand Lines, the Next Generation of Design. I couldn't believe what I was reading. She was literally trying to make the baby part of the brand story a freaking prop for marketing. I wanted to blow it all up, but not yet. I needed to be smarter. So I reached out to Valerie, the longtime client who'd told me about Alyssa's shady pricing. Valerie was practically a family friend. She'd known my mom, had ordered custom work from us for over a decade. I told her everything. Her silence on the other end of the call was terrifying, but then she said the one sentence that changed everything. I think you should talk to your uncle, my mom's brother. I hadn't spoken to him in years. He moved across the country after her funeral and basically disappeared, but apparently he and Valerie had stayed in touch. Here's the part that made my heart stop. He still owns a 20% stake in the business. My mom had left it in her will, just in case anything ever happened to Dad. It was like she knew something like this could happen one day. I had completely forgotten about it. So had my dad, clearly. And that meant my uncle still had legal power. It took me 2 days to get in touch with him. When we finally spoke, I laid out the entire situation. Alyssa, the pregnancy, the rebrand, the planned phase-out. There was a long pause. Then he said, "That business was your mother's soul. If they're trying to cut you out, they'll have to go through me first." He flew out 2 days later. No one knew he was coming. I told him not to tell anyone. He wanted to go straight to the shop and confront my dad, but I convinced him to wait until the gender reveal party, the one where they planned to announce the new future of the business. It was perfect, because I was going to let them stand up in front of all those clients, friends, family, and then pull the rug out from under them. This wouldn't be a fight behind closed doors. It would be public, loud, and irreversible. The day of the gender reveal arrived, and it felt like I was walking into enemy territory. Alyssa had gone all out. The event was held in a rented garden courtyard, with gold balloons spelling out, "Oh baby," at the entrance, champagne tower, catered hors d'oeuvres, even a flower wall for selfies. Everything screamed influencer energy, even though half the guests were longtime clients of our woodshop, people who didn't care about glittery cupcakes or mommy-to-be sashes. I spotted them almost immediately, my dad in a crisp new suit, beaming like he'd just won the lottery, and Alyssa wearing a white flowy dress like she was walking down the aisle again. Her hand stayed glued to her belly, which barely showed, but she made sure to cradle it in every photo, like she was already posing for the cover of a mommy blog. I stayed at the edge of the crowd, watching quietly. No one knew what I had planned, except Uncle Ray. He arrived 30 minutes in, wore a plain navy button-up, no fuss, but people know. A few of the older clients whispered when they saw him. He hadn't set foot in town for nearly a decade. Alyssa clocked him too. Her smile faltered for a second, then returned twice as bright. She didn't know who she was dealing with. The event schedule was printed and handed out on fancy cards. Of course it was, and I nearly laughed when I read it. Right there, at 2:30 p.m., wedged between baby predictions and cake cutting, was a presentation titled, "A Legacy Reimagined, the Future of Our Family Business." I almost felt bad for how hard they were about to crash. Almost. At exactly 2:28, I motioned to Uncle Ray, who slipped away toward the sound booth. He'd already worked it out with the tech crew. I made my way to the front, heart pounding, but steady. At 2:30 sharp, Alyssa tapped her glass for attention. She stood under the floral arch with my dad beside her, smiling so wide I thought her face might crack. She launched into her speech about love, rebirth, and blending families and businesses, about how they were honored to carry the vision forward, and how the company would soon be reborn with a more modern, youthful identity. That was my cue. I stepped up beside her and took the mic from her hand. The crowd murmured. She tried to whisper something, but I ignored her. My dad stared, confused. I just smiled, and then the projector behind us flicked on. Slide 1, the real transition plan. Slide 2, screenshots of Alyssa's confidential proposal files, logo mock-ups, phase-out timelines, the $5,000 exit package offer. Slide 3, a screenshot of the company's legal ownership file, with no mention of me, and Alyssa listed as co-owner. Slide 4, a reminder that Uncle Ray still owned 20%, and that any ownership transfer required a majority vote, which they never got. The courtyard exploded in gasps and whispers. My dad's face turned ghost white. And Alyssa? She froze, like someone hit the pause button on her entire body. Then Uncle Ray stepped up beside me, calm, cool, collected. He took the mic and said, "This business was built by my sister, and no one, not even family, gets to rewrite her legacy without the proper vote." My dad tried to interrupt. "You don't understand," but Uncle Ray held up a hand, and that's when the real bomb dropped. Ray pulled a folded paper from his jacket and announced that he had filed a formal injunction the day before, blocking any further branding changes, financial access, or structural changes to the company until this matter was resolved in court. You could hear a pin drop. Then a few of the clients clapped. Someone actually said, "About damn time." Alyssa turned and walked off without a word. My dad didn't follow her. I stood there another minute, let it all sink in, then calmly said, "Congratulations on the business, though. That stays in the family," and I walked off to a round of applause. I thought the gender reveal showdown, that once the truth was out, once Uncle Ray dropped the injunction, once the crowd turned, once Alyssa stormed off in front of everyone, things would settle. I was wrong, because 2 days later, Alyssa posted a reel, a video, black and white, dramatic piano music, slow motion shots of her walking barefoot through our woodshop, wearing my mother's old work apron. Caption, "When they try to silence you, but you were born to create. This isn't the end, it's the beginning." I nearly broke my phone in half. She was in the shop, alone, after everything. I drove straight there, heart hammering, and yep, her car was parked out front. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and there she was, filming another video. This time she had a paintbrush and a swatch book in the other, narrating some nonsense about soft tones for nurseries that echo generational harmony. I didn't say a word, just held up my phone and started recording. She froze. I asked how she got in. She smiled, said she still had a key, that my dad hadn't asked for it back. That legally, as co-owner, she had every right to be there, except she didn't. Not anymore. Because thanks to Uncle Ray's injunction, all ownership changes were frozen. including hers. Until it went to court, she had zero legal standing, and I told her that. She didn't even blink. She just turned around and kept filming, like I wasn't there. So I called the police. She didn't think I'd do it, but I did. And when they showed up, I showed them the documents, the injunction, proof that any co-ownership claims were under legal review. They asked her to leave. She smiled again, that same fake, calculated smile I used to trust when we were 20, and walked out slowly, like she was the one doing us a favor. But she made sure to say one last thing before she left, loud enough for the cops to hear. "This isn't over. You can't erase me. Not when he still loves me." And she was right, because that night, my dad called me. His voice was shaky, quiet, like he was finally realizing the cost of what he'd done. He asked me to meet him, alone, said he wanted to talk. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. We met at a diner near the shop, one my mom used to love. He looked tired, not just physically, deflated, like a balloon that had finally stopped trying to float. He told me Alyssa had moved out, that things had been tense ever since the party, that he wasn't sure if the baby was even his. Those were his exact words. I stared at him, stunned. He admitted they'd been fighting, that Alyssa wanted to move forward with the business, with or without him, and that when he suggested putting things on hold, she threatened to go public with everything. I asked what everything meant. He didn't answer, just stared at his coffee and said, "I think I messed up." No kidding. I asked him why he did it, why her, why now. He said something I'll never forget. She made me feel like I had another chance at building something, like I wasn't just fading away. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't just about lust or ego or stupidity. It was about fear. Fear of aging, of losing relevance, of watching his legacy, my mom's legacy, become mine, not his. Alyssa offered him immortality, but what she really offered was control. I stood up to leave, and he asked if I'd consider coming back into the fold. I told him I never left. He did, and that if he wanted me in his life, or this business, he had to show up in court and make it right. And then I walked out. Court was scheduled 2 weeks after that diner conversation. 2 weeks of radio silence from Alyssa. No social media posts, no cryptic reels, no interviews with local mompreneur blogs. Nothing. I should have known that meant she was planning something. The morning of the hearing, Uncle Ray and I arrived early. We had our evidence. The injunction, the fake branding files, the co-ownership documents signed without a majority vote, and proof that the business had always required 2/3 approval for structural changes. Ray, with his 20%, had never signed anything. Legally, Alyssa's ownership wasn't valid. We felt ready, calm, confident, until she walked into the courtroom with her mother and a new lawyer. Alyssa looked completely different. Gone was the glowing, flowing influencer. She wore a dark, shapeless maternity dress, no makeup, and glasses she'd never worn a day in her life. Her mom clutched her arm like they were about to attend a funeral, not a business hearing. But it wasn't the performance that rattled me, it was the folder her lawyer was carrying. Thick, tabbed, too thick for a simple business dispute. I glanced at Uncle Ray. He noticed it too. We all sat down, and the judge, an older woman who didn't seem like she had time for drama, called the session. My dad was there too. He looked like he'd aged 10 years over, wouldn't meet my eyes. Just sat on Alyssa's side of the room, rubbing his temple like he already regretted everything. Then Alyssa's lawyer stood up, and that's when she dropped it. They were countersuing. Not just to secure her co-ownership, but to claim emotional damages, prenatal healthcare compensation, and wrongful exclusion from a business she had supposedly poured months of unpaid labor into during her pregnancy. I almost laughed. I wanted to shout that she hadn't poured anything into the business except chaos, Pinterest boards, and some paint swatches she stole off Etsy. But this was court. I had to stay quiet. Then they pulled out the big move, a signed, notarized letter from my dad, dated 3 weeks earlier. It stated that he considered Alyssa a vital co-creator of the new vision for the company and intended for her to remain an equal stakeholder moving forward. He had handwritten that she was instrumental in growing brand interest and deserved recognition for her creative contributions. It was damning. I looked at my dad. He couldn't look back. Uncle Ray leaned toward me and whispered, "This isn't about business anymore. This is about control." And it was. Because then Alyssa's lawyer said something that made my skin crawl. Given the emotional investment and the physical toll of pregnancy, and considering her role in the recent brand proposal, we are requesting not only co-ownership, but also temporary operational leadership during my dad's upcoming medical leave. I blinked. What medical? That's when Alyssa's mom passed over a sealed envelope. Inside, a doctor's. My dad had been diagnosed with high blood pressure and was advised to limit occupational stress for 90 days. I looked at him in disbelief. That's what this was? He was sick and didn't tell me, but he told her? And now she was trying to slide in like the hero who saves the business while daddy rests? It was brilliant, evil, calculated, but brilliant, and honestly, we weren't ready for it. The judge didn't rule that day. She said she needed to review the counterclaim and both sets of documentation. gave us all 2 weeks to submit supplemental evidence. Until then, the injunction held. But Alyssa walked out of that courtroom like she'd already won. And my dad? He left with her, didn't even say goodbye. Those 2 weeks were the most relentless, anxiety-ridden stretch of my life. I barely slept, barely ate. My brain ran like a motor stuck in overdrive, trying to predict every possible move Alyssa could make in court. Uncle Ray and I were constantly on the phone with our attorney, building our case, trying to prove Alyssa was not a legitimate business partner, let alone someone qualified to lead anything. But we knew that wasn't enough. This wasn't about logic anymore, not about numbers or paperwork or legacy. This had become a narrative war. And Alyssa? She was winning. She'd painted herself as the young, pregnant partner stepping up to rescue a family business from the selfish, bitter daughter and the absentee uncle. It didn't matter that it was fiction. She played the sympathy card like a professional, and her lawyer leaned into it hard. I needed something that shattered the act so badly none the most dramatic courtroom monologue could save her. And then I got it, purely. One of our former interns, Mia, DM'd me on Instagram. We hadn't talked in months. She was polite, friendly, asked if I was okay. Then she said, "You probably Alyssa's trying to clients, right?" Apparently, Alyssa had been reaching out to clients on the pitching she was offering. Mia had been CC'd on emails before, kept the receipts. I asked for She sent 8 emails, same different clients, all sent during the same weeks Alyssa was publicly branding herself as co-owner of my dad's shop. It wasn't just shady, it was sabotage. Even worse, I noticed something in the footers. Alyssa wasn't just using her own Gmail. She'd created a whole new domain, alyssacreatives.com. The website was already live. It featured mock-ups of cabinets she didn't even design, including pictures from our original portfolio, the ones my mom drew up decades ago. She watermarked them, with her name. I sat in silence, staring at my screen, trying to comprehend the sheer audacity. She was stealing clients, plagiarizing designs, using company property to build her own business, all while trying to take ours in court. So, we gathered every bit of it, the site, the emails, screenshots of her social media bios where she listed herself as founder of Alyssa Creatives, while still claiming co-ownership of our family business. It was exactly what we needed. But then came the second bomb. Uncle Ray pulled some legal strings and got access to a preliminary paternity petition filed anonymously in another county. Guess whose name was listed as alleged father? Not my dad. It was some guy named Tyrell Carter, a local fitness trainer. And guess what else? We found pictures. Alyssa and Tyrell, together, a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago. Her sitting on his lap in a booth at some lounge downtown. Time-stamped 5 days before the gender reveal party. I was shaking as I put it all together. The pregnancy, the co-ownership push, the quiet period before court, the lawyer swap, the sudden performance of victimhood. It wasn't about love. It was never about legacy. She was trying to cash in on 2 futures at once. And now, finally, I had proof. Court reconvened on a Thursday morning. Cloudy skies, air heavy, like even the weather knew what was coming. Uncle Ray and I walked in calm, composed, and armed with everything. My dad? He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He came alone this time. No Alyssa, no lawyer, no flashy entrance. Just a broken man in a wrinkled suit who couldn't even look at me when I nodded hello. We waited. Alyssa entered 20 minutes late. She was wearing a gray knit dress this time, the baby bump more visible now. But the confidence? Gone. Her eyes darted. Her smile was forced. And for the first time in all this mess, she looked nervous. Her lawyer was with her, whispering frantically, gripping a thick red folder like it was a life raft. And then the judge entered. No opening remarks, no pleasantries. She got straight to the point. "I've reviewed all submissions from both parties, including supplemental evidence provided by Mr. Ray, last name. Before we proceed, is there any new material either side wishes to present?" That was our cue. Our lawyer stood and handed over the new exhibit binder. Exhibit G, we labeled it. Inside, the 8 poaching emails, screenshots of Alyssa's website, a printed Hoy's registry proving she bought the domain under a fake LLC, then the Instagram posts, the plagiarized cabinet images, the timeline of her interactions with Tyrell Carter, and finally, a sealed copy of the paternity petition. The courtroom was silent except for the soft flipping of pages. Then our lawyer said, with all the calm in the world, "We argue that the counterclaim of co-ownership is not only fraudulent, intentionally manipulative, built upon deception and misrepresentation. Furthermore, Ms. Alyssa has created repeating business while still active to assume leadership of this one. That alone query duty, if she ever had any to begin with." The judge raised an eye, asked Alyssa's lawyer if a rebuttal. They tried, but all she had was a weak objection, irrelevant personal and emotional distress. No facts, no denial of the domain, no explanation for the duplicate pitches, just a long, flailing attempt to steer the narrative back to the stress of pregnancy and Alyssa's visionary role. It didn't land. The judge closed the folder, looked directly at Alyssa, and asked, "Is Mr. Carter the father of your child?" Alyssa went pale. Then she smirked. "I don't know," she said. "It could be either." The entire courtroom gasped. Someone in the back literally whispered, "Oh my God, my dad?" His face crumpled like paper. The judge nodded slowly, scribbled something in her notes. Then she delivered the ruling. Alyssa's co-ownership claim was denied. Her request for operational leadership? Rejected. All branding changes were permanently blocked. And the kicker? Because she had used internal material and attempted to poach clients while the injunction was active, she was now barred from entering the premises or contacting company clients directly under threat of civil penalty. The only thing the court allowed her was a follow-up hearing if she could prove paternity and make a legitimate claim for financial support from my father, which, after that confession, unlikely. She stormed out of the courtroom, no shoes, she had kicked them. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, yelling that we'd regret treating a pregnant woman like this, but no one followed her, especially he just sat there, still, silent, like a man who'd finally seen the full scope of the disaster he. As for me, I didn't say a word to him, not that day, because there was still one more chapter. I didn't go to the shop for 3 days after, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed space from the sawdust, from the ghosts, from the sound of Alyssa's fake laugh echoing off my mother's tool. I needed time and cared about saving it. And then my dad called. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. "I need to see you, at the shop, just you and me." I almost didn't, but I did. When I walked in, the place was quiet. No machines, no hum of work. Just him, sitting on the old stool by the belt sander, holding a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold hours ago. He looked small, not physically, just reduced, like he'd shrunk into the shell of the man who used to teach me how to measure cabinet frames with a pencil behind his ear and paint on his jeans. He didn't start with excuses. Not this time. He just said, "You were right." I didn't say anything. He kept going. Told me how, after my mom died, he never really grieved, just buried himself in the business. In me, poured everything into raising me right and keeping the company alive. And how, when I grew up and started taking over naturally, part of him felt proud, but another part felt useless. He admitted Alyssa made him feel needed again, seen, worshipped. She said all the things he hadn't heard in years, and he let himself believe them, because facing the truth, that his time at the helm might be done, was too painful. But watching her unravel in court, realizing she didn't even know who the father was, hearing her say it could be either, he said that was the moment something in him shattered. That's when he realized what he'd nearly thrown away. He looked at me, eyes bloodshot, and said, "She used me, and I let her, but you never asked for anything but the chance to build something with me. I don't deserve to ask this, but if I step aside, would you take it? The business?" I just stared at him. Everything I'd been fighting for, bleeding for, he was handing it to me, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a funeral, because there was no bringing back what we lost. Still, I nodded, slowly, quietly. "I'll take it," I said, "but not for you." He looked confused. I continued, "Not to protect your name, not to save face. I'm doing this for Mom, for what she built, for the people who still believe in this place, and for myself." He nodded, said he understood, then handed me a small envelope. Inside was a worn photo. Me, maybe 7 years old, standing next to my mom in the shop, covered in sawdust and holding a toy hammer. On the back, in my mom's handwriting, it said, "For when she's ready to build something of her own." I cried in the parking lot. Not for Alyssa, not even for my dad, but for the girl in that photo. The one who thought love was simple, loyalty was forever, and family meant safety. She was gone, but the woman in her place, she was ready.